One good point or an opportunity missed to get all three? That's the question we need to answer as Arsenal draw 0-0 away from home against Man City at the Etihad. And what I normally say is, this late on in the season, when you go up against your main title rivals, especially away from home, you draw 0-0, you get a clean sheet, and you're still ahead of them in the league table. I normally say, job done, happy days, go back to the Emirates and win the rest of your games. The reason why it's a bit of an issue this season is because this is a three-horse title race. It's a unique season, and all three teams have a legitimate chance of winning the Premier League title. So now Liverpool, as they won at home against Brighton and Hove Albion 2-1 just before the Arsenal Man City game, they're now in control of the Premier League title race, 2 points ahead of Arsenal, 3 points ahead of Manchester City. However, what I would say is, Arsenal fans, all you could do is focus on your own game, focus on what you can control. And Arsenal absolutely did that, as I think, despite the fact they didn't have majority of possession in the game against Man City, they absolutely did control it because they didn't let Man City have the ball in the areas that they wanted. So let's talk about the game. Because I think when Arsenal fans see that Man City don't have John Stones and they don't have Kyle Walker, they don't have Edison either, I think they get really, really excited and think to themselves, right, this is a great chance to go away to the Etihad and get a win. Something that the side hasn't done, I think, for maybe about 3 years now in the Premier League. So I think this was a great opportunity for Arsenal to go out and really stamp their authority. Because while I think this wasn't necessarily a must-win game for them, I think it was definitely a must-not-lose game for them. And I think with Arsenal, with the strongest lineup possible, with Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, and I think especially Saliba, because he wasn't there in that game at home at the Emirates last season when Man City won their 3-1. I think he was the big reason why Arsenal won this game. Him and I think Gabriel were absolutely fantastic. And I think the Jorginho and Rice double pivot just in front of them were great. I think the front line was there was a bit to be desired from them today in this game, and I did think to myself that they could have done better. However, I did think that Man City did defend very well and they kept control of the ball a lot, but I think it was in the areas that Arsenal wanted them to keep him. So how did Arsenal and how did Mikel Arteta kind of stifle Pep Guardiola? And I think this is quite interesting because I expected the game to be very end-to-end, very attacking, and I could have, maybe expected there to be a few more goals than there were in this game because there were none whatsoever. And I did think to myself that, was it the fact that it was Pep versus Guardiola, student versus the master, that I did think to myself, maybe, just maybe, they would have outthought themselves, and I think that's what they did. And what happened was, Guardiola and Pep absolutely knew what the other one was going to do, and they managed to just kind of cancel each other out. But I think it was to the positive of Arsenal and to the detriment of Manchester City. And I know it's been nearly 3 weeks since Manchester City played Liverpool, but I think Arteta definitely looked at that game and definitely thought to himself, right, I know Liverpool have one way of getting Man City, but I think there's another way to get them as well. And I think that was where Arteta and this Arsenal side really, really excelled in this game, because of the fact that, Arsenal defend in their 4-4-2 formation, but they weren't very aggressive. And I think that was a bit of a surprise. And I think maybe it was sensible from Arteta, because away from home at the Etihad, if you get it wrong, the Man City will definitely hurt you. But I thought what was quite interesting was, I thought that maybe Nathan Ake would be the one who would be in a bit of trouble on the ball in this game, considering when I saw the lineups. And I did think to myself that, right, because of if you think about how Liverpool won the penalty in that game against Anfield, it was Nathan Ake giving a sloppy ball back to the goalkeeper, to Edison, and it was Darwin Núñez who ended up getting on to the end of that. But in this game, I thought to myself, right, Arsenal are going to be looking for Nathan Ake. As soon as he gets the ball, they're going to be going at him. But what happened was, it was actually Mateo Kovacic on the ball in this kind of left-sided of the defence kind of area on the edge of the box. And I thought to myself, that was incredibly interesting. And essentially, Mateo Kovacic played as a centre-back in this game, and it's only because he was there to help build up the play, because Pep Guardiola thought that Mikel Arteta would think that Nathan Ake was a weak link in the defence. And that's why it was so interesting, because this happened all the way across the pitch. So with Odegaard on the back of Rodri, and with Havertz on the back of Akanji, who was inverting into that midfield, what they were doing was just not letting Rodri get on the ball whatsoever in this space. They were just saying, Rodri, you are not getting the ball whatsoever. And it was actually quite a passive press, but they were making sure that they got up in their typical 4-4-2 formation Arsenal. But what I thought was quite interesting was because at times, if I can just get my mouse back, what happened was Akanji and Gavardio were essentially playing as good old-fashioned fullbacks and getting up and down the width of the pitch. And so what would happen is Foden would sometimes invert from that side, for example. Akanji would do the same as well. Let's leave him in there. And then what would mean is Bukayo Saka, who I thought didn't have a great game. I didn't think neither Arsenal winger had a great game, Jesus or Saka. What they would do is they would have to invert depending on which of the wingers would do it. And so Gavardio would end up having a lot of space on this left-hand side. And Ben White, who I thought actually had a really good game, was a really good outlet for Arsenal in this game, was the one who was always having to deal with the Man City fullback. and I thought it really nullified the midfield of the wide players, of Arsenal in this game. But you can also do that on the other side as well, because sometimes you'd have Bernardo Silva inverting into that midfield, and you'd have Manuel Akanji going on the outside, and then Gabriel Jesus would have to track back. And I thought, again, defensively, he had a really tough game as well. And I thought it was really good for Manchester City to try and push back the wingers of Arsenal to make sure that they couldn't get forward and they couldn't pose a bit of a threat. But also good from Arsenal to make sure that Man City couldn't get through the middle of the pitch whatsoever, but they constantly had bodies with Havertz, Odegaard, Rice, Jorginho, and whichever winger it was, whether it's Saka or Jesus, inverting into the midfield to match Man City 1-for-1. But I think you absolutely still have to give credit to the fact that Arsenal not only let Man City have the ball in tight areas, but they're able to make sure they didn't have too many shots on goal whatsoever. Erling Haaland, only 2 shots in the whole game, 2 shots off target. And I think Saliba and Gabriel have a massive role in that game, and I think they absolutely come out on top against Erling Haaland. I think the fact that you have maybe Gabriel who's winding Haaland up, you see him constantly talking, you constantly hear him talking to Gabriel, and Haaland actually getting distracted, I thought, in this game, and getting too involved in Gabriel, because whenever they got it, Saliba would be the one to sweep up and pick up any of the leftovers. And I thought to myself, they had an absolutely fantastic game. They were absolutely helped by the fact that Jorginho and Declan Rice were just in front of them. At times, I thought, Arsenal were sometimes there, and then Jorginho and Havertz were literally on them on the edge of the box as well. I thought, Ben White was fantastic. And I think you've got to give a great shout out to Jakub Kiwior, who's not the first choice left back. Left back isn't probably his even best position. It's probably left centre back. But with Zinchenko out, he's absolutely stepped up. And to play against this Man City side, in a game of this magnitude, massive credit to him. Coming up against a very competent opponent in Bernardo Silva, arguably one of the best in the world in that position. I think he absolutely did a phenomenal job defensively. It's a shame he couldn't get forward as much, but I think both Arsenal fullbacks struggled. I did think Ben White was a bit of an outball in this game. If you move everyone forward a little bit further and bring some of the Man City players back, I did think that anytime David Raya got his hands on the ball, I thought he was quite disappointing in this game in terms of his distribution. And I thought it's something where Arsenal needed, to make sure that they had an outlet. And sometimes it was Havertz, but obviously he had Diaz, he had Ake, and I thought to myself, you can't always just rely on Kai Havertz to win all the knockdowns. You've got to find other avenues. And I think one of the avenues emerged was the fact that when Akanji went off injured, Rico Lewis came on. And I think that epitomized the fact that I think John Stones wasn't fit, despite the fact that he was on the bench. If he wasn't coming on in that situation, I think there was no way he was going to come on. But I think, in terms of experience, in terms of build, in terms of height, Jesus versus Rico is a massive win for Arsenal. Arsenal should be winning and getting the ball down to Gabriel Jesus at every opportunity possible. But I thought David Raya's kicking was actually really bad in this game. I thought the link-up play between Jesus on the left-hand side was really bad. And I think it's one where he did a fantastic job defensively. I think he did a great job in building a play a little bit at times. I think he maybe should have shot earlier for a couple of them. But I think, this on this left-hand side for Arsenal, Gabriel versus Rico Lewis, I think this was a massive missed opportunity for Arsenal to really capitalise. I think this was, maybe the wrong substitution, you could argue, but also what options does Pep Guardiola have on his bench with John Stones not fully fit? And I thought it was a massive missed opportunity from Arteta here. And so the game carries on being incredibly cagey throughout the whole 90 minutes, but I thought Arsenal had a great chance to really go on and win the game and prove that Arteta did the right thing in not pressing Man City so high up, defending low and trying to hit them on the counter-attack, but also stifling City at the same time. When Leandro Trossard comes off the bench, he's running through a goal, and he should have squared it to Gabriel Martinelli if only his first touch was better. And here it is, Martin Odegaard plays the pass, cuts through the Man City defence perfectly, and this is the exact situation that Pep Guardiola didn't want his Man City players to be in, running back towards their own goal. As we saw in the Liverpool game, they're not that good at defending against running back towards their own goal because of the fact they're just not used to it. And Arsenal exploited that perfectly. And I'm just saying, without the pace of Kyle Walker, especially in this game, just think to yourself, Trossard, take a good touch here, square it to Martinelli, and hope him to finish against a second choice or taker rather than Edison. And I just thought to myself, right, if they don't score that, they probably aren't going to score in this game. And the game did finish up 0-0. Like I said, very boring for the neutral, but I think for Arsenal, a very good point. When you take your game into isolation, you beat Manchester City at home, you now drawn with them away. You beat Liverpool at home, you drew with them away. And I think they're the only side to beat the title rivals and really put a good dent against their rivals. But for all three teams in the title race, I think the perfect result for Liverpool. I think it was a good result for Arsenal, and I think it's probably an okay result for Man City. It's not ideal for Man City, as they do have some tough fixtures coming up, but I do think that they can go on and win all those games. But I think the fact that they need to win the league, they need Liverpool to drop 4 points and Man City to win every game. I think Man City probably won't go on to win the league. However, I do think that Arsenal and Liverpool, it's not a straight shootout. Man City are still there lurking, but I think the point was a very good result for Arsenal. And Arsenal fans, you may think to yourself, some of you, that Liverpool now have the ascendancy, they're now in control, and they absolutely are. But I think Liverpool do have some very difficult fixtures coming up. They've got Man United away next weekend. They've still got to play Tottenham Hotspur at home. They're going to play Aston Villa away. I think there are some very difficult fixtures. They've still got the Merseyside derby as well. I almost forgot about that one. And Liverpool have a very bad record against Everton at Goodison Park as well in terms of getting the win. So I think Liverpool will drop points. Can Arsenal drop points from here on out and win the league? I still think so. Can Man City still drop points and win the league? I don't think so, which is why I think this was a good result for Arsenal, because they don't put Man City in the rear view mirror, but they still very much keep them in their place out of sight, and you focus on ahead of you, you focus on the next game, you focus on Liverpool. And I think Liverpool just have to go on and win every game, and if they do that, I think you have to say, you know what, fair enough. I don't think Liverpool will. I think Arsenal are absolutely still in the race. I think this game was more about making sure that you're not out the title race, rather than making sure that you are the favourites forward. And I think Arsenal still, even though based on probability, on Opta stats, Arsenal still have the lowest chance to win the league. In my opinion, I still think that Arsenal are, at this moment, favourites, just based on the fact that Liverpool have some fixtures which I think they might drop points in, and Arsenal do have some tricky fixtures as well, but I think Arsenal may overcome them. I don't know why. I think it's just because of the fact that there's just something about Arsenal on this Arsenal side. I think the performance against Man City at the Etihad proved that to me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one.